Sometimes you have to do extra to get to where you're trying to go in life. And Shakira has done just that. She will be valedictorian of her graduation class, and she plans to major in government and minor in Spanish. And I heard a little rumor that you were interested in maybe international study or study abroad at some point. In response to her acceptance into Harvard, Shakira stated, "I still don't know why God continues to bless me so much, but I am so thankful. Despite doubt and disappointments, He has always reminded me and reminded me to be faithful and remained faithful to me. My parents told me that 2018 was my year, and it is my year." And as you are already aware, she's got a great support system right here behind her, and her parents and her family members who are here. Shakira, see, you heard her, right? From the mouths of babes, that's what we say. Shakira, we are so proud and honored that you are one of our students. We can just only imagine the great things that are ahead for you. Congratulations as you begin this new chapter in your life. And come back to Mississippi.
That's right.
For just even giving me the opportunity to come here today and be recognized for my achievements. I just wanted to thank my parents and all my family for continuously supporting me and all.
Shakira, Harvard is the Mississippi State of the North.
Your neighbor there might argue with you.
Yeah, I started to say.
I'd already run it by her, and she smiled.
I'm going to have to be quicker, let's face it.
Deep down, she knows.
I won't smile at that.
Oh, that's a wonderful recognition, and we'll have fun keeping up with her and seeing just where life takes her. So,
Congratulations,
yeah.
Mom and Dad. Yeah.
Dr. Wright,
Yeah.
it's your report.
Good morning to everybody. So we finished our last round of meetings with our regional superintendents, and those are always well attended. Lots of great discussion, lots of an opportunity to share information that's happening here, and also hear things that are on their mind and how we can better support them as we move forward. I attended the Child Health Council meeting. This is a group that's really talk about expanding their reach. It is a group that started out as the Division of Medicaid, the head of Medicaid, Department of Health, the Department of Mental Health, the Department of Mississippi Public Policy, chair of the pediatrics at the Mississippi UMMC. Oh gosh, Dr. Boutros, who heads up, she's a pediatrician that heads up another group. And we really all were kind of coming together to figure out how can each of us in our own ways really support each other, et cetera, and support little ones as they're coming along. And when we started our collaboratives, one of the suggestions was, and Dr. Linda Southwood from Mississippi State, how could I forget Linda, had suggested that, what if we used ages and stages as a way to get a developmental read on where children were coming into our collaboratives, because it's an assessment that will give you an idea of, are there any children that are still out there in pre-K that need additional services? Because the one thing that we know about research is that if you can get these children the services that they need as early as they possibly can, then they're going to be better off and be more successful. Well, our whole work morphed into applying to a federal grant that Senator Cochran was really instrumental, I need to say, in making sure that Mississippi was awarded. It's a multi-million-dollar grant over 3 years that really focuses on early intervention with little ones, health care for little ones. Healthy children obviously learn better. And so this group has really hung together to implement that. And the one thing that we did was the Division of Medicaid, there's a test that you can administer to small children. It's an assessment, a developmental assessment. And so Medicaid agreed to cover the cost of that assessment for any child that is Medicaid eligible. Well, we have a ton of children that are Medicaid eligible. So this made it possible for parents who might not have been able to afford it to get this developmental screening, and then for us to be able then to follow up and see if they need additional services from that. So, you know, I say to people, it's, you know, I think it was Margaret Mead that said it's amazing what you can get, a small group of people can get accomplished, you know, when they put their minds to it. And this has just been a very powerful group, small in number, but big in heart. And I really see this over the next few years having huge impact on the small children in Mississippi. I had my Superintendent's Advisory Council yesterday. That is always well attended and always a lot of good thinking in that room. I really value their input. They bring questions, they bring concerns. My entire staff is here then to respond to that. And if it's not something we can resolve that day, then it's something that we put on the agenda to get resolved for them. The one thing I want to talk to you a little bit about, we published this document, and I'll pass it around. This is something that we are incredibly, incredibly proud of. And I want, if anybody's been responsible, this is the English Learner Guidelines, Regulations, Funding Guidance, and Instructional Supports. These are for English language learner children. Who in this room, please stand if you were involved in this book? Very good. Well, I really want to applaud you and even those of you that may not be in this room, because this is probably one of the highest quality pieces of materials that I have seen in a long time coming out of the department. This will be distributed, if it hasn't already been. I think it may have already been. Where's Dr. Benton? She may have already hit the send button. Thank you. Thank you. Notebook gives districts the ability to look at the funding sources that they have coming in and how they can use funding sources to help English language learners. It also gives them instructional ideas of what they can do in their classroom, a lot of the regulations that are put out through ESSA. I mean, it is just a whole host of valuable things for everybody that touches English language learners. And for those of you that don't know, that is a growing population in our state. Much quicker, I think, than a lot of other states may be seeing. It's also, as you know, we are building in a component in our accountability system that focuses strictly on English language learners. And knowing that we don't have enough EL teachers in the state, this is also a way for us to build capacity in our general ed teachers that touch these children to know how to work with these children when they're in the classroom. And one person that I want to is Melissa Banks here? Where's Melissa? Is she here? Okay, so Melissa Banks, in addition to all of the other duties that this person has, she is our designer, you name it, Melissa does it. And if you take a look at the quality of just things inside here, we've even got quotes from children, which I love. But the whole layout of this is all Melissa. And to have somebody on staff that this is not her full-time job, to be able to rely on, they want to distribute it to their entire listserv. So this will go out to every state in the nation, recognizing the work that's been done here. So hats off to all of you that were instrumental in that. And the beauty of this, too, is how wonderful this is going to be for the children in our classrooms that are going to benefit from your work. So I wanted to let you know that was there. And also, we have our first early college high school that's a partner with an IHL. All the others have been with community colleges. So Greenville is partnering with Mississippi Valley, and so they are going to be opening their first early college high school with a university, which I think is really awesome. And we were also, we had our entrance conference with Peer. They are going to be conducting an audit of our educational savings accounts. Those are the vouchers that are written into law with ESA for students with disabilities, where they can take those funds and use them outside the public school system to receive services. So they're going to be auditing that over the next couple of months. And I want to recognize one, I have two people, but one's not here. So Dr. Yan Lee, would you please stand? So Dr. Lee is our Director of Research and Analytics, and what I want to tell you about her is that she received the 2018 Next Generation Technology Leader Award from COSN. And not only that, she has already been in the newspaper. So she is representing us well, and the beauty of what she has done in this news article, she's talking about how to use data to tell a story. And we have been talking about how do we use our data to tell our story and do it in a positive way. And we're very blessed to have Dr. Lee. You talk about somebody with perseverance. I'm going to tell a little quick story on you, Dr. Lee. She had to finish her doctoral degree, and the only program that where she was doing this was in Washington, D.C. Am I not correct about that? Yes. She was flying back and forth from Washington, D.C. for 6 months, something like that, and on a weekly basis in order to have the program on the weekend and then be back to here on the work. So we are so proud of you and so proud of the work that you're doing and the recognition that you're getting. So Dr. Lee, thank you very much. And she's one smart woman, let me just tell you that. Our spotlight today is featuring, ironically enough, as I hold up this book one more time, the English-Spanish Dual Immersion Program at North Jones County Elementary and Jones County School District. As you know, we just released this not only across the state, but across the nation through CCSSO. This is a program that's been started in kindergarten and first grade, teaching children English and Spanish. So obviously it helps the native Spanish speakers and native English speakers learn each other's language. This approach helps the Spanish speakers retain their own language while they learn English, and it also obviously enriches the experiences of those children that don't speak Spanish. And they start learning early. And the one thing we know about language acquisition, particularly a second language, is the earlier you can start, the better off you are. But it's also got a component for parents of English learners to help them start developing their own English skills as well. So I want to acknowledge our guests from Jones County. So Debbie Blackledge is the District English Learner Coordinator. You want to stand? All right. She's also a member of Mississippi's English Learner Advisory Panel, who helped create our document. And Anderly Foster, am I pronouncing that correct? All right. She's not here. She's not able to be here. She's the principal. And Nilda Whitty, the English learner, language learner teacher, and Tanya Branch. She's not able to be here either. Okay. Well, thank you both for being here, and I hope you're going to be very proud of what we've produced for you. So here's our video.
Because the State Department is now requiring our EL kids to become fluent in 5 years, we began to think, what is it that we can do to make this possible? So how could we do this to where it would benefit our EL kids? I began to see how we can learn 2 or more languages. It develops cognitive abilities. It increases your ability to analyze. It increases your ability to understand language as a whole. But if these Spanish-speaking kids lose their culture and they lose some of their language, these wonderful benefits of being bilingual, they will lose that as well. So our hope is, and our plan is, to maintain that.
I'm proud to be, my little girl to be in this school. He say, Daddy, we got a little lady that speaks Spanish. So I told him how my little girl, I said, really? He said, yes, and I'm really happy and I'm proud to be in the school. Things like that. And I said, well, you have to work so hard because you got to speak 2 languages. You got to speak English and Spanish. But, you know, I want you to keep in your Spanish. because you come for, you know, for parents for another country to speak Hispanic, and I don't want you that lost your language where we're coming from, for your parents coming from. But also I want you to speak English too, where you can help you and others. And sometimes when he speak to me in English, and I told him, I say, Mackenzie, I say, I don't understand what you say in English because I never heard that words. He said, okay, I'm going to tell you in Hispanic. And they repeat me in Hispanic.
I feel as if being in this class has been an awesome experience for Kate. It's kind of brought different cultures together for her. She's very inquisitive about wanting to know about, you know, the Hispanic culture and where it originated, and she's just very, very inquisitive about it. My father-in-law owns a business, and she told him not long ago when he was trying to communicate with a Hispanic man about his vehicle and such, she told him, Papa, he speaks Spanish, he's not deaf. Because he began to speak louder, trying to make, you know, the other gentleman understand. And so she has decided that for the summer, she wants to come up with several questions and phrases that she can teach her grandparents to be able to communicate with their customers within their business.
Right, Allie's experience in Miss McLaurin's class, the first few times she came home, it was exciting because she would come home and tell me different words that she had learned. She would tell me going through the grocery store, she'd say, Mom, do you know what this is in Spanish? And Mom, this is a, she'd say the word in Spanish, and I was like, Allie, that's just amazing that you're already learning stuff. So she's really absorbing it like a sponge and loving it. She does have many Spanish-speaking friends. She talks about playing with them on the playground and in the class and how they teach her words, and she will tell them, you know, how to say it in English.
Here at North Johns, we have approximately 20% of our population are English learners. Those parents at home, it's important for them to be able to reinforce what we're doing here at school. Here at the school, we're teaching them how to speak English, teaching them how to read English, teaching them vocabulary. But when they go home, at the home, they're speaking in their native tongue. So we felt like an important part to our EL program would be to add a component that would help our parents to learn how to speak English as well. So this year we've put into place a program where we've purchased 5 computers, and we have a program that we use to teach our parents how to speak English. We have 20 slots, and those filled very rapidly. Next year we hope to add another 20 slots to the program. With the program, the parents have time slots that they come in. They sign in and they go to the designated room, and they can spend as much time as they like with the program, and they learn at their own rate.
In the very end, the end of the school year in April, we looked at the scores and tests, and of the 5 kindergarten classes that we have here at North Jones, this particular enrichment bilingual class scored 82%, the highest of all the 5 classes. And so that is like huge.
That is like huge. That's great. Well, join me in congratulating that group. Thank you so much. Don't be the least bit surprised if we have plenty of visitors headed your way. So I'm sure once people find out about this, they're going to want to know, how can I do it in my school? So it's wonderful, and it's a great way to get kids and friendships and relationships and all of that at a very early age, as well as learning each other's language. So thank you for everything you're doing for our children. We appreciate it. And that concludes my report.
My report today consists of attending a network meeting that Dr. Oakley, Dr. Murphy, and Dr. Jennifer Wilson, who is superintendent of the Greenwood School District. We went to Alexandria, Virginia to attend a workshop sponsored by the National School Board Association on building strong early childhood education programs. And the department's gotten a grant to work next year. And so we heard primarily from the first 5 cohorts, states in this program. there was a lot of information. My biggest takeaway was that we're all struggling with the same thing. Everybody is struggling trying to find licensed teachers, qualified teachers to do early childhood work. But I'm going to talk primarily about the New Jersey program because I think the report that they gave encapsulated really the benefit of a pre-K program. They began their program as a result of an economic study that they did, that the impact of early childhood education would have on the future of their state. And they came away with several things, one of which was that obviously increased school readiness and success, a decrease in special ed and retention, a decrease in risky behavior and better health, improved social and emotional development, and improved graduation rates. And of course, all of those things are the very things that we're working on and want to impact here. They had fewer dropouts. They have better students who enter school more prepared, and they are predicting, they're still studying their students as they go through, but obvious, hand in glove, these children will have higher incomes and a better quality of life down the road. So their report, to me, really hit on all the things that we're working for. Actually, just to segue from the presentation we just saw, the gentleman from New York says that 42% of the children in New York enter school speaking some language other than English. So you just think about what a challenge that presents. But if you can get those children in a pre-K program and incorporate English with them like we just saw, such a better prospect for a child to be successful in school. And so they're working with that, and those that they're tracking are benefiting the most. Pre-K is giving them the most benefit. So, but we did hear a few things about some creative ways that they're dealing with teacher shortage, using retired teachers and working through all that. One district particularly was cooperating with teachers, that one teacher was very well qualified to teach English language arts, those, but she was not comfortable with math and science, and so they split the day. One teacher taught in the morning, one teacher taught in the afternoon. Just some creative ways that, and I think that's where we're going to have to go as a state. We've got to look at some creative ways on how we're going to address our teacher shortage. And just as a side note, I attended a graduation the other day at one of the state universities, and out of what appeared to be hundreds of thousands of graduations, because it went on quite a while, but obviously lots of graduates, 31 graduated in education. And that doesn't mean they're all going to teach. So you can see where we are, and it's going to take working with the legislature and through this department on looking at how we can address these issues that we have in trying to get qualified teachers into the classroom, and particularly those in early childhood. So that primarily, I made my note, lessons learned. Strategy is a must-have. Every state has to have a good strategy. You have to weigh internal needs against external needs, custom content for your targeted audience, which in this case a lot of times is children who don't speak our language. And the other thing, which for those who don't work in education, you have to have a clear, concise message and make the jargon fit the audience. We laughed about, we love all these acronyms, and it just goes on and on and on. And words are always changing in education. I mean, we always get a new word. And so you have to make it where people can understand it. And particularly the parents that you're dealing with have to know what you're, and when you're selling your program, you have to make it so that everybody who's not in the circle all the time understands what you're talking about. But it was a good meeting. I'm kind of a nuts and bolts person. I'm kind of like, okay, we did this and it didn't work, but we did this and it was great. we didn't get as much of that as I would have liked to have had, but it was a good meeting, and I came away with a feeling that for the collaboratives that we have, we're doing really well. We just wish that we had it in every school, but the ones that we have are doing very well. So that's my report. Sure.
Mr. Franklin had brought up, so John Creeman and Paul, if you'd just come up for a quick second, you'd asked about, cybersecurity, cyberbullying, and there's a document in your folder. It's a high-level executive summary about the work that is ongoing and will be done around this. So, Paul and John, if you want to just briefly talk about how your two offices have collaborated on this.
Sure. Mr. Franklin, in response to your request, and as we discussed at the last board meeting, OTSS has taken on a review of where we stand in terms of guidance and support that we can offer to the districts with regard to safety, both physical and virtual, so to speak. And so we began to stitch together the pieces that we have and have developed a roadmap for producing a framework of guidance and best practices support that we can offer to the districts. And we wanted to basically walk you through in very brief terms the 4 content areas that we are stitching together, as well as just to mention that we are looking not only to offer this framework and these best practices, but also guidance on how to help the districts implement these recommendations. And so section 1 would be in regard to the work of the school safety, Office of Schools, Safe and Orderly Schools.
So as I previously mentioned, we do, upon request, assist districts with the development of their comprehensive school safety plan. We have recently revised the school safety manual. We're currently working with an internal group, and will expand to a group of a wide range of stakeholders with the School Safety Task Force, looking at the data that's currently collected and to ensure that it meets compliance with federal and state law, and trends our local school districts. And so once we complete the proposed revisions for that data collection and the process, that will be included in the school safety manual, as well as this guidance that Dr. Freeman's office is working with for the privacy and security of school safety, and we'll make that part of the school safety manual.
With regard to the other 3 sections, the Office of Technology and Strategic Services does work with districts to provide direct and indirect support as they secure their environment. But to the point that you raised, obviously that children are also operating online outside of the context of the school, but often there's a bleed over between what's happening at home versus what's happening at school, whether that's because of kids talking to other kids outside of school, but also the technology the kids bring home from school. So part of this will have to cover how we can guide and train teachers, students, families about how best to use technology, whether it's the school's equipment or their home equipment, to make sure they're safe from cyberbullying, safe from inappropriately using or accessing information online, as well as keeping them safe from people who might have nefarious designs and trying to lure children through the internet. The third section really is about privacy, and that extends from not only thinking about how the schools and the districts, as well as the MDE, protect the information we have about our students, but also as others interact online, such as teachers using applications that they find to load student data in there to give information support to kids, that those are being properly vetted and reviewed to make sure that when they use those sort of third-party tools, that they're not violating the privacy of the student. And then the last section really is about securing the network from people who are trying to gain access to private information that they would use for identity theft or other purposes, and making sure that not only can we help the schools, the districts, protect their systems, but also how to respond if there is an attack or a breach or inadvertent release of data. So we want to make sure we cover all these areas, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, to also think about how you would implement this and support them as they act on the guidance that we want to produce for them, and do this in a comprehensive and coherent way, and release this later in the year to the field, with, of course, input from our end users, the people, our target audience for this guidance, to make sure that it's what they need.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Any questions or comments?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. On the second point, online safety and appropriate use, you were talking about at school and at home. As you forward on this, I would suggest that you develop some kind of materials that could be distributed to parents, that they better understand what kids could get into and how to prevent it, I guess I'll say. But I think we're making a big leap that parents have that. Some may, but more than likely a lot don't. And just
Absolutely. Parents are one of our target audiences, and we do want to make sure that we tap into existing resources. We don't need to reinvent something for Mississippi that is a national problem. So we want to draw in through national partners to make sure that we are actually giving the best, cleanest guidance with the most efficient lift from the part of the MD and get that information out into the field. Absolutely.
Some of the districts that are going on doing one-to-one initiatives that the parent has to come in and go through the training at the same time the student does, sign off on it, pay the deposit, and do all that. So some parental training is taking place before a computer or device is ever issued to a student. That's across the district. I mean, across the state. That's just in our district. So
best practice. Yeah.
Very quick question for me. This is really good, by the way. What's your image to have the framework and guideline procedures to roll out for next school year, or what timing would you?
We're shooting for the end of the year. We have other pieces, what MDE's postures as well as what we're doing as it relates to the IT department, the statewide IT department's guidelines and requirements for security. So we're shooting for the end of the calendar year to bring back a chance to reveal this. It ideally be the beginning of the school year, but this is going to take us probably to the end of the year. I think on the other part about the what other schools or what schools are currently doing, we are not attempting to try and change what people are doing. If they're doing the right thing, we're trying to offer guidance and support. And if people do have good ideas, we want to make sure we can share those across the state.
Hey, thank you. That's a good report.
One other thing that's in your packet, board members, I want to draw your attention to. Next month in June, the day before our board meeting on the 21st, June 20th from 2 to 5 will be your budget work session. And so we're giving this to you in advance so you can take a look at it, and we'll have a presentation of each of our chiefs talking about their respective budgets, et cetera. And Dr. Gavin will also give you the broad overview of where we are in terms of budget, but we wanted you to have this in advance so you could be prepared with your questions. On one quick side note, when you were talking about what other states are doing, I was on a conference call today because I'm doing a presentation on early childhood with the Education Commission of the States at the end of the month. And the Alabama person was on the line. Alabama's legislature just awarded $18.5 million for early childhood. And the person said, we were hoping for 20. And I'm like, oh my God. Well,
we were hoping for 6.
Yeah, exactly. So other states are doing it. And another call I was on, which just really blew me away, West Virginia is moving to universal pre-K. So there's a state with the level of poverty ours has, very similar demographics that ours has, and they're moving to universal pre-K. So there are other states taking big action. So it's good news around the nation about what's happening with early childhood.
Quentin's got a couple of $100 million he's going to let us tap into, right, Quentin?
Look at that smile on his face. Yeah.
Well, if we're ever going to address all the issues that we have in this state, it has to start with early childhood. You have to start young and follow them through, and that is just something we're going to have to come to grips with sooner or later.
But I got to tell you, you are a board, one of few that I've talked with my colleagues, that has a goal in their strategic plan that addresses early childhood. And so you need to be very proud of that. You took a very bold step in making that its own goal. And I can tell you that not all of my colleagues have that in their strategic plan. So hats off to this board for its leadership.
Okay, do we have any subcommittee reports?
Well, I'll start off with saying Dr. Wright has stolen all my leading thunder. No. Our first topic of discussion in our academic subcommittee meeting was the English learner guidelines. Yeah, I have one just like yours. But I did listen carefully to what you said, Dr. Wright, and I do think I can add something that you didn't point out. Well, two different things. First of all, I'm not sure it was made clear that this is for teachers and leaders, in old terms, administrators. So it's for both audiences. And secondly, that being online guides make it they have been set up such that the person using on the computer can put in whether they want to know about teachers or about leaders, and then what subject area, and it's designed such that then with the click of the button, they can pull up the exact information they need to know at that point in time. And I think that's great, because this is kind of overwhelming to start thumbing through if you're looking, for some specific question you have about providing guidance to English learners. So anyway, that was how we started out our meeting, with Dr. Benton presenting that, and I can't tell you how excited she is about the document. I think, I might say, I think she thinks it's her legacy. Yeah. But anyway.
One of many.
Yeah, agreed. So we did that. I forgot to point out that the committee is Mr. McClellan and Mr. Franklin, and everybody participated really greatly in this meeting. But secondly, we learned about the new online continuing education courses for professional development. And they have under the leadership of Wendy Clemens, have just produced the course catalog for this fall, and these are online. And the committee got especially excited about this because we believe, as does Wendy, that this will allow for greater reach to the rural areas that sometimes are not able to leave the school to come to someplace removed from their hometown to participate in professional development. And this is going to be very interactive, and I won't go into all the details, but I do believe it's going to help us reach more teachers in rural areas, and it's going to be more economical for MDE to be able to do some of their training online. So I congratulate Wendy and her team for developing this for the professional development. Then we heard from Dr. Oakley, who introduced us to the Mississippi Early Learning Standards for classrooms serving infants through 4-year-olds. And I won't say anything more than that at this point in time, because you're going to hear about that as you will need to vote on approval of it going forward to AP. I will say, however, that the subcommittee, Mr. McClellan and Mr. Franklin and myself, we're very complimentary about the guidelines, and we look forward to moving those forward. Then we ended this really excellent meeting yesterday with hearing from Robin Lemons about the work going on in the area of dyslexia. And I suppose I'm a bit naive, not being of education background, but I was I have to say shocked to learn that 1 in 5 students in the Mississippi school system have dyslexia. And I was further shocked to know that 80% of the students who have are in special education with learning disabilities are dyslexia. Now, that was startling to me, but the sad part is, as Robin pointed out, we have only 117 teachers that are certified or endorsed to deal with the issue of dyslexia. In other words, we only have 117 districts, which Mr. Franklin pointed out, that's fewer teachers than there are districts in this state. So we do have a real issue here, and I applaud Robin and her 2 staff that are also certified as dyslexia teachers of taking a hold of this issue and addressing it. And we talked some about how we could increase the number of teachers, and that discussion I'll hold for later. But we also talked about the dyslexia grants that will be awarded this year, and that will come before the board today to look at the methodology for that. All in all, it was a very good meeting, and it was a very interesting meeting. And I thank Dr. Benton and her staff for providing us all this information.
Thank you. Any other reports? That was a lot of information in that short committee meeting. Good. All right, let's, if there's nothing else, let's move into our agenda items. The first one being to begin the APA process to establish Mississippi Early Learning Standards for classrooms serving infants through 4-year-olds.
Thank you, Dr. Elam, for teeing this one up for me. This item we are excited about because this item signals a historical moment, really, in early childhood in Mississippi. It's the last piece of our standards alignment work. We will now have, when this works through the APA process and approval, we will now have complete alignment of our academic standards from birth through grade 12. Literally from the cradle and in the arms to the graduation stage. Dr. Dent is going to share with you how our developmentally appropriate standards have been designed and developed, and then how our implementation plans moving forward. Dr. Dent?
Thank you. So this, of course, addresses goal number 3, so that every child has access to a high-quality early childhood program. And so we wanted to bring to you the components of the development of the standards. This committee met 5 times between September and March. We had external participants. 10 of those were teachers that represented pre-K, child care, Head Start participants, and there were 28 other representatives, including Head Start, lots of technical assistance entities, our IHL staff that we have been working so very closely with in the past couple of years, and a health component from the health department. And so we felt like those guys were really important in this structure. They also represented 34 different entities, along with some national early childhood organizations too. So we've got a national perspective in this as well. So in the standards overview, as Dr. Benton said, we will, this represents a seamless continuum from birth through grade 12. We looked at NAEYC standards, as well as the Head Start Early Learning Framework outcomes. We felt like that was really important, and we really did take a partnership approach with Head Start, with Holly Spivey over at the governor's office, to be able to accomplish this as a team. So we were really thrilled about that. And in this document, we also updated the 3-year-old and 4-year-old standards. These will be released for public comment upon the approval. And then we will work together to be able to create a training program that any entity can utilize to be able to train their representatives, whether it's child care, whether it's Head Start, or whether it's public school pre-K teachers or private school pre-K teachers. But this is also, this alignment is one step in our plan from our birth through 12th grade alignment project that we're working on in the state. So we're very excited about that. With the organization, these pieces, approaches to learning, social emotional development, language and communication, cognition, perceptual, motor, and physical development, all of these standards, they are developmental progresses in key learning areas for infants and toddlers. They're represented in 3 different age groups. For the infants and toddlers, from birth to 9 months, 8 to 18 months, and 16 to 36 months. These age groups represent common shifts in development of these little ones. And so with that, it provides specific skills, behaviors, and concepts that they should demonstrate by the time that they turn 3. So it feeds right into the development for their 3-year-old standards and then their 4-year-old standards. So this gives them that foundational components, that foundational information of what they, and skills of what they should be able to do by the time they turn 3. So of course, in our 3 and 4-year-old standards are all of the components that are more academic but developmentally appropriate. So they're the same components we've always had. We updated those, and so we have those listed there, but especially in the science, and then social studies are also will be aligned. So those will be ready and aligned with the infants and toddlers, and then feeds into 3 and 4-year-olds. So the standards training, as I mentioned before, these trainings will introduce it and have it available for our, what we call our boot camp, the approved specialized early childhood training this summer, the 2-week camp. This will be the 3rd year we've offered this, to be able to offer that for pre-K teachers that are interested in being able to get their credential, their add-on certificate. And then we'll also present this information at the Early Childhood Conference this summer in July. That is the conference that we offer along with the Head Start organization. So last year, I think we had about 600 people. We're expecting that number this year, and we've been completely engaged in trying to get that off the ground. And then throughout the year, next year, we will also have specific training targeted for just this topic during the school year.
Add just a couple of things there, Dr. Dent. We also, during our subcommittee, received some really great feedback and some ideas about the distribution of this document once it goes through the APA process, and we're really going to do our due diligence to make sure, as we always do, get the information out to school districts, but also to the partners that Dr. Dent mentioned, from anyone that touches a little one in our state. We're going to work through our partnerships to make sure that they have a chance to see the standards, because our goal is that they get in the hands of parents and child care providers. So that was one of the things that came out in our meeting. We even talked about using our pediatricians across the state, how we could work with the group that Dr. Wright mentioned earlier, with Dr. Boutros and some of the others at Batson and so forth, to make sure that it gets in the hands of people that need it the most. And then one final thing, I know that some of our subcommittee for sure thumbed through and looked at it, and it's a very high quality document, but it's also developmentally appropriate, because sometimes when you hear us talk about standards, you immediately think about paper, pencil, and schoolwork. And I just wanted to be sure that everybody and those that are watching live stream understand that it's very, very much seeped in what's developmentally appropriate. As you thumb through, when you looked at the infant and toddler standards, you may have seen something that started, for example, about handling books. So if you're there with a baby from birth to 9 months, it's just, you can just envision this and see a picture of a mom sitting, holding a baby in her lap and reading those squishy little books and turning the pages. And so that's what the standard says. It doesn't say squishy book, but you know what I mean. And then it progresses from 8 to 18 months and so forth. So you take it a little bit deeper. And I just wanted to share that example, because what we're promoting is not put a sheet of paper in front of a 3-year-old. We're talking about making learning exciting, fun, and developmentally appropriate. And that's what you have with this wonderful document that Dr. Dent and her team and the many, many partners put together. So,
one of the things that came out of our meeting, one of the speakers emphasized that we think of early childhood as 3 through 8 through third grade, but really it's a continuum, and that's
right.
what you're doing. You know, it
That's
starts at birth and it goes all the way through graduation, and so really that's what we're doing, is getting it all aligned.
And Mr. McClellan made a really great point yesterday in our subcommittee about the partnership with Head Start and the fact that we built off of some of their standards. What a beautiful opportunity we have to further impact learning.
And I'll add to this that people may not know is that all of our professional development in early childhood is offered free to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. So we open the doors to everybody. So if you're a child care provider, Head Start, doesn't make any difference. If we put on the PD, everybody's invited.
So just Monday, I had a meeting with our, what we call our cross-agency collaboration. That's with the health department, who works with licensed child care. Head Start was there. Department of Human Services was there, who manages the child care development funds, and they manage the subsidy program. And so in our discussion about these standards, they were so thrilled and so excited that we would all be sitting at the table together to discuss this document and create the training together so that their staff could say the same thing everyone else was saying. We could produce the same training. We would talk about the high quality instruction that we would, and the developmental practices that we would want our trainers to provide for all of the teachers, for all of the parents. And Families First was there too, so they could access those parents that have their children at home. They could talk about these standards for infants and toddlers and 3s and 4s, and how they could approach training those parents to be able to do some activities at home to get their kids ready.
And any other questions or comments about this?
Okay,
well, go ahead, Mr. McClellan, then I'll get Mr. Sugg.
As we all know, next year we're going to be into another year of selecting leaders across the street. Been in this business for quite some time, and for some reason they always use education to get elected. I hope that we all would join in defending this early childhood piece, not to let them dismantle what we have on the table. I've seen that happen every 4 years. It seems to change. I hope that we will all join together to make sure that we protect what we just put on the table. I think anyone that with any thinking ability can't help but to say that this is going to pay double dividends in year 12. And please, let's join together to make sure that we don't get this dismantled when they get on the stump to make their speeches about what they need to do in education. And it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen to early childhood. I'm saying let's protect it. But they're going to be on the stump talking about education. Let's make sure that we protect this piece. I beg you to do that. And I think it's going to pay double dividends.
Oh, I thought you had your hand up, Mr. McClellan.
I just want to say kudos. Great work, great document. And if you don't get past the first couple of pages, philosophically, it's laid out there. And it's all, and back to the comment about it's all starting at birth. Brain research says the greatest growth in brain development is from birth to 4. So following research, we can't just start in a 4-year-old program and think we got it. There's a lot that happens to that child before they get to the 4-year-old. Thank you for this. Great stuff.
Really a question for next month, but I'm looking and I see the number $6 million that we're requesting around here, and you know, just think, you know, after hearing your Alabama story, nothing gets me worse than getting beat by Alabama. Don't even know. I spend a lot of time over there, and I don't get it. But I would like to have a conversation around that number and why it is that number. And to Mr. McClellan's point, it is election year, and things do happen that are sometimes unusual during election year. So maybe at our next, really drill down on this. I think last year when we were on the coast talking about this, we started talking about early childhood education policy, and I thought it was, you know, enough of an issue that we should probably just have a full out tutorial, you know, primer maybe even, you know, for new board members. But you know, next time that we talk, let's really maybe say that this is our, you know, big issue.
We've come a long way.
Well, I was just fixing to say.
I was on this board when we had to beg for $50,000 just for a trial program. So we are making progress.
Was that back in the Bilbo days? Is that how long you've been here?
No, that was in the 1990 days.
Well, to your point, what I was going to say is they can get on the stump and talk about education, but they've got a lot more good to talk about now than they've had in the last 8 to 12 years. There's not as much to bash maybe as they do sometimes. So we'll watch that, and I agree with you. If we don't tell our story, who's going to tell it? I've said that 1,000,000 times, and so we have to have the data to back it up, and we have to tell our story. All right.
Data.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. Good work.
Okay, next item is approval of the Department of Education contracts. Dr. Gavin, you have all those well, there are only 2 listed, but Dr. Gavin, do you have any comments to make about those?
Just a couple of comments. Like you said, we only have 2 contracts this month. The first contract is a renewal contract. It's a modification actually to an existing contract. That's item 2A. And then item 2B is a new contract, assessment contract. And this is actually our first contract where we're procured it under the new state procurement guidelines. So those are our 2 items that we're seeking approval on this month. Item 2A is a modification, and item 2B is a contract with DRC for assessment.
Do you have any questions on these 2 contracts? Mr.
First one, is her contract going to expire June of this year?
It is. It expires June the 30th.
So she's already drawn part of the funds that are here?
We're asking for a modification. The modification amount is $8,107.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Other questions on these? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Gavin. Item 3 is our consent agenda items. We have A through H. Are there any questions on those? Any comments?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Elam.
Okay, Dr. Elam,
My list is
you
shorter.
go. Okay.
Okay.
G.
Item
Is
G.
to adjust the passing score for the praxis
Dr.
subject assessment in math.
Talk about H,
Okay.
C,
All right, you want to talk H and C? Okay.
E,
Or B or D?
E, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
E, okay. And H, okay. All right, we're going to discuss G right now. Yeah, the adjustment to the praxis.
I don't want to jump right to my question here. I understand that I have a score in mathematics for passing the a praxis subject assessment that currently is rather high compared to national or compared to other states. I understand that. And I'm not saying that I disagree with doing this. The one question that I have, though, is I granted, read it, but does on the letters of, I'll call them letters of support, the letters of comment, it talks about making this pass score of 152 retroactive. And I didn't find in reading this, and I only read it twice, that that's addressed in the cover sheet, like the stuff that the information that the department provided. I can't see that it addresses the retroactive, and I want to know just how big is that? The population that will impact.
That's a two-part question, and I'll let Dr. Murphy address the second part. But on the first paragraph of your board item, the last sentence that says the qualifying score of 152 would be effective upon by the state board. So that just means that any candidate for licensure that needs the math license that currently has a Praxis score of 150 could submit an application and receive that license or that endorsement. As far as the numbers, I think Dr. Murphy knows about the percentages of numbers.
Actually, I don't know exactly how many that would impact for the most part, but to the point that Dr. Vanderford just made, when we receive an application, we simply apply the criteria that are in effect for licensure at the time that we receive the application. So anyone who submits an application at that particular time will apply the 152 and issue if they meet all other requirements, licensure. As relates to the number of individuals, it impacts, again, I don't really have that number for you.
Accessible?
We can, there was
I'm not talking down to, is it 300 or 305. I mean, but I just want to know how much that would open up the possibility of more mathematics teachers. And I have another question too.
So based on the data that we have, it would actually increase about 10% for the most part of what we have already, but I don't have the exact number, that you have.
And that's what we discussed with the licensure commission. It's a small number, and in by no means will this address. I mean, mathematics is one of our critical shortage subject areas, and adjusting the score will not resolve that issue. That's why Dr. Murphy and his staff included some of the next steps as part of the content of the board item, so that you know the areas that we will continue to work to improve.
One more now. I forgot to ask this initially. What are these teachers? Are they missing the current 160? Because this would be just as applicable at 152. Are they missing it? Are there a lot of them that are missing it by 2 or 3 points, or are they just off the other end, way like 125?
It varies depending on the candidate. There are some that are missing the mark 1 to 2 points, and there are some that are far away from.
I was taking it 6 times.
And I think the scope of it, from algebra to trigonometry, just the scope.
Yeah, I thought that was addressed in one of the letters, and I thought that was very appropriate. If she hired to teach algebra, why does she have to be that proficient? Instead of trigonometry. I thought that was a very good comment.
The young lady that took it 6 times has been within from 137 to 154. That's what the mom says.
Well, how will we communicate that? Will they have to reapply if it's retroactive? They would reapply. Would you send out a general communication and it would be on?
Yes, sir.
They would have to do that?
Yes, sir. The candidate. We don't take any action without receiving an application, and so yes, we'll send out a memo to superintendents, our partners with IHL, and also the teacher organizations and so on and so forth, to help us get down to the teachers, and that we don't have a way to contact the teachers, and so we would depend on districts and other partners that we have to help us to get the word out.
So from a time frame standpoint, this will be effective after the vote today, and
yes,
so
sir.
now communication. actually be some teachers eligible to teach math immediately.
Yes, sir.
And so that communication is important.
Mr. Franklin?
Ask a question totally off the subject of math, but since the two of them are sitting there and not asking them to come back later, may I? Would that be?
Hey.
You're talking about math here with the shortage situation. Do y'all have, and I may have missed it, but do you have a comprehensive approach to how we're going to approach the shortage area? And I said, our goal number 4 on the strategic plan has been, having a quality teacher and a leader in every classroom. And it's the shortage issue is just tough. And listening to the people that are out in the field, you may have something already. If you do, I sure would love to see it, or y'all present it. Where are we with that?
Yes, sir. Well, we're working. Well, Dr. Elam is part of one of the groups that we're working with that's looking to address diversifying the pipeline, but not only diversifying the pipeline, but addressing the shortages for the most part. And so we're working with other stakeholders within the state. Our Teaching and Leading Solutions group. Dr. Burson is also working with the institutions of higher education, and so we're developing together. And met recently with Dr. Lee, who's going to help us on some research. And so we don't want to just take a stab at what we think. We, actually want to create data if we don't have the data. Go out and talk to students for the most part to find out why they're not coming into the profession, why they're not choosing education. And so yes, we have a comprehensive plan, and we're working that plan right now. It's in the research phase, but some parts we're moving faster than others. So we're looking at policies, all of our policies that we have on the books right now, to make certain that all the requirements that we have are indeed relevant and necessary, and those that are not, we're bringing them back to you and the commission for consideration to adjust, those policies that are seen or bringing about a barrier for the most part. So yes, we do have a comprehensive plan, and we are working it. Right. Not at this point. Yeah. So.
But something in the future.
Yes.
I hate to keep saying it because, like early childhood, I feel like I'm just sitting away with a set of drums. Let's beat it. It's critical. That's critical. The teacher shortage and the whole shooting match. That's critical also. So.
Dr. Murphy is very clear on his charge, and he's not in that chair by accident. His leadership has really been invaluable to us since he's come here, and I think the outreach that he has done with a lot of stakeholders, I think, is going to make a big difference. So I really want to commend you personally, Dr. Murphy.
Student level movement there, from Educators Rising organizations to the teacher academies that have been developed in multiple schools that are really growing. So there's some grassroots efforts that are moving up that just that hadn't. May not be as widespread as we want them, but they're growing.
Thank you for letting me answer.
Yeah, Mr. McClellan?
Am I correct that the 5%, it does not apply to a core curriculum, right?
That accreditation piece.
Yeah, you can't use that 5%.
For academic cannot be used in the 5%.
Okay, any other question or comment on this? Thank you. Good discussion. Okay, now let's go back up to C. And that's Dr. Benton. This is approval of methodology to award competitive grants to early learning collaboratives.
My question and concern is that under the basis for awarding grants, could the collaboratives, could we give priority to collaboratives being established in low-performing school districts? In other words, that are applying for these collaborative grants, could we give some type of priority? If we really want to address low-performing districts and all, this would be a quick jump start to help those folks.
Based on subcommittee yesterday, I talked with Dr. Dent this morning, and we're going to look. That RFP has not made it all the way through procurement yet, so we'll be looking at priority points within the RFP for those low-performing schools.
Okay, Did I answer your question? That's it? Okay. Then the next one, y'all can shift chairs again. Yes. The next one is item E, and this is, Dr. Vanford, this is approval of temporary rule to begin an APA to revise licensure guidelines in K-12.
I do have an answer for you.
That was quick.
Yeah.
So it will be 89 more people from 2013 to, with the data that we looked at, so 89 more individuals. So.
I become eligible to have.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Quick.
Wow, that's quite a few.
What are we? Do we have any plans to proactively talk to those 89? I mean, if we have their file and their address and say you are now, instead of just hoping that they hear this, can we make sure that they know? I mean, that seems like a simple way to.
We can possibly drill down and find their score reports.
Now,
because that was my concern with dissemination of that, and then
not even know.
Not getting the
Now, if you
licensure.
can come up with the
This
number
is a-
that fast,
Right.
you can
Right, that's
send
true,
addresses.
but,
Ability to filter through that, right?
Yes, yes. We received their score reports.
But word, I think, will spread with this. I mean, the Mathematics Association group, MAMT and MACT with IHL, this has been a conversation that's been ongoing for quite some time. There's been, as Dr. Murphy mentioned, a lot of research that's gone into this. I mean, this was not a decision that was made lightly just to come make a recommendation to adjust the score. So I think word will spread rapidly.
Just for my education, the middle school math supplemental only score is 165. Was there any that or keep it the same, or what does the supplementary only mean? Just for my education.
Yeah, so we have several pathways for obtaining an endorsement in mathematics, and just standalone middle grades endorsement can be added to a person's license that hold a standard license in any area. And so we don't have any programs in the state for middle grades, and so the only way you can add middle grades mathematics is by taking and passing the Praxis 2 test in that particular area to add it to a standard license. This is not an assessment that has been brought up as an issue at this point as relates to pass rates, and so that's why that one's not there.
I do think the scope.
But with alternative methodology and all, then setting a standard, we're going from 160 to 152, but the alternate way would be 165. That must mean we don't want anybody to come through that alternate way.
I'd say the scope of that is such that the scope of that is with just 8th grade math doesn't have the breadth of a algebra through calculus to it, so the score could.
That's just too.
Right. Yeah, and we can't compare, test to test for the most part. Different assessment. Thank you.
Okay, now we're back to E. What's your question, Mr. Franklin?
Bunches. One is, I'm delighted to see that we're looking at
Franklin, can you
alternate ways.
Into your microphone.
Remember, we're sorry.
I'm just delighted in that we're doing that. My question is and concern is, if you go to page 2, we've got these folks who are coming. We're allowing them to come in from business and industry with leadership qualities demonstrated, but we're only going to give them a 3-year license, and then we're going to require them to jump through some hoops to get a 5-year license. Why don't we just say we've got an alternate way, and if that's credible, then why do we want to go back and force somebody to follow the education route? When the law spells out that we're to look at, our direction was to look at alternative ways to do it. And then it doesn't say or, you got to and do these things to get a 5-year permit. Why?
Well, part of the intent of the Licensure Commission when this policy was originally developed was basically an educational orientation. I mean, you may be a great leader and in another industry, but not have knowledge of the federal regulations and the state regulations and state board policy and accreditation requirements. So everyone that uses this option under the state statute would be required to go through. Basically, it's just an educational orientation, unless Dr. Murphy has another.
I mean, if there's a desire, and this came from the legislature, this didn't come from the Accreditation Commission, the mandate to do it. And it's like, okay, we're going to open up, but then we're going to turn back around and run you back through the squeeze tube, to get this education component. The law doesn't address that at all.
And this particular structure actually aligns to the way we license others as well. And so whether it's through the non-traditional program for teachers, as well as for traditional. So the traditional candidate who completes a degree in the area, they receive a non-renewable license initially to actually obtain orientation to school leadership, and they're already in education. And so for this group, we actually convened a panel of stakeholders who recommended this to you initially. And so we're not really changing what you approved initially. And again, some of the thinking behind why they recommended this is so that it aligns to what's required of others when they enter into the profession. That's they receive some kind of non-renewable license that requires them to complete some kind of orientation to their new role as an administrator. And then they have to complete some kind of criteria to get the permanent license. And so we're not asking them to take an assessment, not asking them to complete any prerequisite coursework in leadership. That's just an option, for actually converting the license. But simply asking them to do what's outlined in the law under 37.9.14, which is become oriented with the roles and responsibilities of a superintendent before converting. That was one of the rationales that were provided by the group. The other rationale was that the idea is great to bring over the CEO, but what happens if this individual, they're not as successful in education as they were in the corporate sector for the most part. They don't hold a permanent license that would allow them to move to the next district and not be successful, so to speak. And so that was some of the thinking that they had surrounding this.
I would make is that it says in here that the appointing local board has latitude. So if they're not successful, they got all the latitude in the world to find somebody else. But I'm just saying we got a regular route now that's providing leadership out there. But somebody, there's an effort here, and I don't know who it came from in the legislature, but this is a legislative mandate to us to draft these things. So if we've got this current process, and yet there's somebody thinks that there's a need to broaden that a bit, like we're talking about doing with the teacher thing, then why do we want to go back and tighten it back up? We got folks who are out there now, and those folks don't have to demonstrate evidence of maintaining an A or B or moving somebody above if they're a D and F to move them up a notch.
Yeah, well, 37.9.13 actually requires that. Subsection 1 requires that of the educators.
Anyone that does not go through this alternative route. And to your point about the professional development, and I'm sure you read the language that we added there at the end of paragraph 4, that if someone comes in and has, through this method that's already gone through those professional development and met those requirements, then they would not be required to repeat that. We would accept the prior professional development that they've completed, and they would not have to redo that.
First, a little bit, I haven't been in education all my life, but in leadership position. But if I was going to another industry, I would want some training into that industry and what that language was and some of those things and what that looks like is important. But I think that's what's happening in the reverse. If you've got somebody that's a great leader in another industry coming into this industry. And so I think there needs to be some level of training that goes into that in order to orient them, but it is very different.
Well, I was going to basically say sort of the same thing, but just to be clear, if I am a chemist working for a local company and I can teach at the high school level and you need a teacher, then I come in and I go through this orientation that you've outlined. but there are no assessments or anything. I go and I learn about federal requirements or state requirements or the local, whatever. I mean, that's what I'm required to do. But that's basically it.
Yes,
Is that what you're
but
saying?
But the example that you used, like a classroom teacher,
Uh-huh.
that individual may not be eligible based on paragraph number 2 because you have to have 6 years of
Of experience,
successful
yeah.
leadership experience
To become
at a particular
right,
level.
yeah, okay.
But yes, ma'am. So one of the flexibilities in this is that there's no assessment attached to this, whereas the traditional pathway does require.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about as y'all were explaining that is if you get someone in a leadership position who doesn't know all the federal guidelines, state guidelines, whatever the issue may be, you can end up in a heap of trouble. So I can see where this would be important.
We got a lot of folks practicing that have followed the traditional route that needs something, maybe orientation or something, because as far as effectiveness, we're lacking in some ways. And but I know that just like there are folks in the business, I live with one who doesn't think we ought to have alternate routes to teaching or anything else, simply because, okay, I went through this training program, and now somebody else can do this other way, you know, and they just don't think that's right, and that's just a philosophical difference, you know. I think leadership skills now, the things you're talking about learning, the orientation stuff would be a lot easier to learn than the leadership part that produces results. It's my 2 cents worth. I don't have any problems with people doing an alternate route into teaching or leading or et cetera. We got teachers in classrooms today that followed the traditional route 2 or 3 times and came out with certification, and kids going to heck in a handbasket all day, every day.
Okay.
Just my personal opinion, you know.
Other question or comment on that? All right, let's move to item H. This is Dr. Gavin. Approval of the statutory revisions to State Board Policy Part 3. What's your question? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, on page 3, Dr. Gavin, top of the page there, the last sentence, it said, the awarding office shall be responsible for compliance with the rules and regulations governing the procurement of services. Is the awarding office your office or the other offices, like Dr. Benton's
The
office?
program office.
Program office?
Program office.
Have to sign off on.
We sign off on the entire procurement process, but once it's awarded, it's up to the program office to follow what's outlined in the RFP and what they said that we're going to do. But that's in conjunction. That does not, I mean, the procurement office is walking step by step with the program office through this process to make sure that the RFP hits the street correctly and that all the language in the contract is accurate.
But once the contract is awarded, then the program office has to make sure that the money's being appropriated and spent appropriately, and
all
the
laws are followed.
Yeah, laws are followed, and the objectives.
And one of the things that we'll be doing from a compliance standpoint, we'll be monitoring that to make sure that that is actually adhered to.
What I hear you say, Madam Chair, once she signs off on it for me to go forward with my purchase, it takes the responsibility off of her.
Well, she signed off on it, so she has some responsibility, but then you can answer the question, Dr.
And that's not, and that particular piece is not anything new in the policy. But yes, I mean, if you're tasked with implementing the contract, there has to be some responsibility on you as the program office to make sure that you are following the law. And my role as compliance, I will come back and monitor you, and if there are any issues, then we'll point that out to you.
to make sure that I don't make a mistake in administering project or whatever it is that you have signed off, giving me the authority to execute.
Correct. And if you recall, and this is in reference to contracts. So
Right.
one of the things that, if you remember, you approved, we have a compliance director now, and that's one of her roles, is she's going to be working with the program offices to kind of make sure that they're following what they say they're going to do in the terms that are outlined in the contract. So there is some monitoring and some auditing behind the scene, but as a program director, I mean, the responsibility, we've walked you through the process and we have the contract in place, but it's up to you to make sure that you're following the guidelines within the contract that you signed off on, as well as the procurement director and myself.
Dr. Gavin ensures that all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, the law is followed. That's what she's got procurement for and a compliance officer. But then once all that's put into place, then it's up to Dr. Benton or Dr. Vanderford or Mr. Freeman or any of his people, Robin Lamonis, I could go right down the list, to make sure that that contract is executed the way it was written.
And I really think that's where the compliance officer adds value.
Yes.
Maybe
That's,
so.
yeah,
Maybe the
that's why we're
compliance
paying
officer.
that person.
But I couldn't see me
Yeah.
I couldn't see all the responsibility shifting to me, because I may not know exactly how to execute.
That's why that compliance officer
I
is
could
there.
understand the compliance officer being.
Yeah.
But as the program director, I mean, you have responsibility to know, what's in your contract and what you should be following. We're going to guide you as the procurement and as operations to help you get there, and then we're going to monitor you on the backside. But as a program director, it is your responsibility to, if you're entering into a contract, you need to understand the terms of your contract.
You have been in trouble.
Absolutely.
Because that person did not know or did not follow.
Now, where the procurement office and my office will come into play on the front end, we're going to make sure some of the issues that we had up front with the terms and the conditions of the contract on the front end may not have necessarily been, or the contract may not have been procured within certain guidelines, but we're going to be on the front end to make sure that the procurement of the contract is done properly. And then on the backside, from a compliance standpoint, we'll be monitoring you to make sure that, you're following the terms of the contract and that it's being administered the way that it should be.
And I couldn't understand that person. You prove it, and then you're on your own. There need to be some way.
But if there's some auditing going on during
Right.
the course of the contract,
Right.
then
So,
they should catch something maybe that's not being
You
done.
bring up a good point, because I think monthly too, just as a point of clarification, each of the chiefs has a budget person assigned to them to monitor their budgeting pieces as well. And those are people that Dr. Gavin has oversight of, so that if we are having issues, those issues are raised very quickly. But classically, these are kind of standard contracts that we have. They're not like unusual contracts. They're, just like the assessment contract that's up there. The assessment contract, procurement followed through. We know that it's got all the pieces there, but then once that assessment piece is done, then how we execute on that assessment contract is the responsibility of the assessment office, in conjunction with Dr. Gavin's office, as she is monitoring the drawdowns, et cetera, that we schedule for those contracts. So it's a joint responsibility.
My concern is you've got program people who are supposedly have expertise, et cetera, like Dr. Benton in her area and the people you named in their areas. And in addition to that, though, then they've got to be trained on or whatever else on all these guidelines that they've got to make sure that they're dealing with. I'd rather their focus be on their program part than I had on making sure I'm following the contract guidelines.
And as I said, and I don't disagree with that, but as I stated up front, the bulk of the work will be done in getting the contract in place. So once the contract is written to specifications and according to the state law, all the program office is then tasked with just making sure that you submit your invoices timely and that your vendor that you've entered into the contract with complies with the terms of the contract. That's not something that the procurement office will be able to do. The program office will be responsible for making sure that those deliverables that are in the contract are followed.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this? Okay, thank you, Dr. Gavin. Okay, let's move into the approval of, if there's nothing else on this, let's move into the approval of our items. Since we have a short agenda, I think we can get this done. Under the Office of Chief Academic Officer, do I have a motion to approve item 1?
So moved.
Second.
Do we get a second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Under the Office of Chief Operations Officer, do I have a motion to approve item 2, 2A, and 2B?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
I want to vote, I'm voting no on B.
Okay. Item 2 and 2A are approved unanimously. Item 2B, Mr. Franklin votes no. Under the consent agenda, do I have a motion to approve items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H?
I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Let's get it on the floor. Do we have a motion
Oh, I'm sorry.
to approve?
So moved.
Second.
A second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Franklin votes no on E, H. Okay. All are approved unanimously with the exception of E and H, which Mr. Franklin votes no. Okay. I think we have a relatively short update, so let's go ahead and consider entering executive session before lunch. I think we can wrap this up and have a lunch.
So move.
Dr. Dean, do you have a motion for us to consider entering the executive session?
I move that the board consider moving to a closed determination of the need to go into executive session.
Second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We would ask that all who do you want in?
Just the leadership.
Leadership team, everyone except the leadership team, if you would vacate the room, please. Andrea Kelly was appointed a school finance officer to serve as an internal auditor in the department, and so that's the only action that was taken. The next item is for you to look in your board, in your side pocket, and we have a draft of meeting dates for 2019, the rest of 2018, and then into 2019. And if you notice, October of 2018, then April and May of 2019, the days have been shifted a week, some earlier, some later, to accommodate schedules and what have you. And then the rest of them remain the same. So we need to approve these so they can be spread on the calendar. Do we have a motion to approve these dates as presented? Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Can I just say one thing there? I already entered the dates in my calendar, so it's not regarding any question about them. But I was wondering, I won't say it that way. Has any thought been given that we would have a half-day retreat to review our strategic plan?
Yeah.
Just to have a discussion. I'm not looking for some big change I want or anything. I just think that it's worthwhile to look at it every year.
Are you thinking like maybe August or September? You know, get past the summer?
Further past than that, I won't be here.
Would
Did you have a month in mind, Dr.
Would you send us your calendar so we can set it up?
No, do you want it? Are you sure you want to think about September? You want to think about October? Like, what would be good? What are you thinking? Because we're
October's fine. September's not.
Work on October.
But just do it in conjunction with the board meeting. You know, half day either side. I don't care which side.
Next month, our June meeting, we're having the budget on Wednesday afternoon.
Yes, sir. 2 to 5.
2 to 5. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thursday. What about academic achievement? We're going.
Well, what Dr. Benton and I agreed to was we'd see how things progress on her end, and we might meet from 1 to 2. But I don't know. She's going to advise me mid-month about.
I have an item here on the agenda to approve the change that we previously approved the budget meeting for June the 22nd, which was on to June the 20th, which is what you just said. So we need to vote on that since that had been said. Okay. We have a second. Second to Mr. Franklin's motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we're meeting on June the 20th. 2 to 5.
Here.
Yeah. Dr. Kelly, you have a quick report you want to give, and then I think we will have covered
Yes, ma'am.
everything.
I'll make this brief. Back in November, I approached the board about the feasibility or exploring the idea of having student reps on this board. I see two real benefits. First of all, I think it's a real leadership opportunity for students if they were to have this experience. But beyond that, I think that we might be informed to make some better decisions, particularly around issues that directly involve students, if students are a part of the group. I asked Dr. Wright's staff if they would compile some information for me to bring back to you to help us to move this along. And they assigned Frank Spencer, who is a Special Assistant Attorney General from the Attorney General's office. He got in contact with NASB and got more information, and that's what I want to share with you today. There are 15 states currently that actually use students as part of their board of directors. Those states are Alaska, California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Iowa, Maine, Maryland, Montana, Nevada, New Jersey, North Carolina, Tennessee, Vermont, Washington State, and Massachusetts. Those are the 15 states. Of those, 10 of the 15, the students are assigned by the governor's office. The rest of them, the other 5, they are actually assigned by statewide student council associations. Some are assigned directly by the board, but it's only 5 of those. The rest come from the governor's office. I think that this is my personal projection, I really think it should be perhaps a competitive process that would involve where you would likely get students participating from all over the state of Mississippi. There were cases where they had 1 student rep. There were other cases where they had 2 students rep. Most often where they had 2 students reps, 1 student was a junior, the other one was a senior. The senior was the voting member. The junior would be the non-voting member. Most of these, I would say, though, are actually cases where the students don't vote at all. They're here in an advisory capacity, which would not require any changes from the legislature, us asking the legislature to make changes to our charter in the way we do business. We also need to just think about what the next steps should be. And that's what I want to seek from you today. How should we proceed from here? One thought that occurred to me, in that in all of these states, in 10 of these states, the governor is actually appointing. I think somebody needs to have a conversation with the leadership to say that we have an interest in doing this, and just give them some ideas on what we have found out. I'm hoping that perhaps the governor or lieutenant governor, whoever we talk to, will delegate it back to the board and let us do it. But I think for us to just go out and do it without informing them would probably not go well once it is learned that we are in the process of doing this. So I'm open to any suggestions on how we proceed from here. If you think it's a good idea. When I approached you the first time, you thought it was a good idea. Now, what you've learned from what I'm telling you today, we really need to know if there's an interest in this board in pursuing this or not.
Well, I think it's a good idea. I think, obviously we need to inform the leadership, and then I would think we would develop a task force among this board and some MDE people who to set out our guidelines and work the process or figure out the process as to how we're going to get these students. And then, that's just off the top of my head. But I think we've got to come up with a process to be able, and I think take what has been gathered from other states and look at how they've done it, and then develop our own hybrid plan of how we're going to go about getting this word out. And that'll take a little while to get the process done and get it out to the schools.
Frank has done most of that work for us. In fact, I have a full report here that I can give each one of you a copy of how it's working in every state, that would pretty much give us a roadmap on how to do that. And I have copies for all of you.
Find all this and maybe get something back to the board, say by the end of the summer. I mean, since school's already out, and then see what your pleasure is.
Unless there's some objection, we'll move in that direction, working with you and Dr. Wright or whomever she appoints, and then we'll come back with something. Thank you for your work on that, though. Does anyone need approval to attend any out-of-state meetings?
I have a NASB board meeting that's coming up June 7th through June 9th that I need to get approval to attend.
We have a motion to approve Dr. Kelly going to the NASB board meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Okay. I was going to say I'm also attending a NASB meeting, but it's sponsored by NASB, so there's not funded, but it's the New Member Institute. I think I'm barely just qualified to be a new member, but I'm really excited about it. It's also same meeting. I think it's Friday, Saturday, 7th.
Yeah, we need to give you
Bye-bye.
approval, because you know that was big on the auditor's list, so, do we have approval for Dr. Dean to go learn about being a board member? Second.
They're paying for,
Yeah, they pay for it, but we just need to make sure you're covered.
they're for other work too, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye. We do have $26,000 credit with NASB now for training.
Oh, good, good.
Great.
Good deal. Okay, anything else? All right, well, let's go eat lunch. We're just a little late, but we.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, yeah, we do need a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, there's that.
So moved.
Yeah.
Got a second? All in favor?
Man, it's tradition.
The small binder didn't get it.
Yeah, I know. But we are all done now, so you don't have to come back after lunch.
Oh, that's right.
That's true. That's true.
That was good.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Good, how are you?